Today's hearing is the third in a series examining the State Department's construction of diplomatic facilities overseas. In July, we learned how State failed to properly acknowledge known risk in the construction of the new embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. Building the embassy in Kabul has taken longer and cost hundreds of millions of dollars more than budgeted, leaving embassy staff in less secure and temporary facilities. In September, we saw how a long delay to design and build consulates in Matamoros and Nuevo Laredo in Mexico exposed personnel to some unnecessary risk. And today we hope to understand the State Department's progress into building a new embassy in London, perhaps the single largest expenditure we've had on such a building. Obviously, the United States needs a large, secure, and functional embassy in the capital of one of its oldest and most important allies. Certainly, our presence in London is noteworthy, and it needs to provide a variety of functions above and beyond what other embassies, I'm sure, are called upon to do. But one of the things we're concerned about is the State's gambling with Federal dollars to get the embassy that our diplomats need. Over the summer, the State Department Inspector General issued a report on its findings regarding the London embassy construction. The Inspector General found that while the agency has certified to Congress its plan for a new embassy would be secure, in reality, that was not necessarily the case at that time. In fact, State had no idea if the embassy had met security standards, but it started the construction anyway. State's premature certification and construction violated Federal law and its own internal policies, which required State to prove the new embassy would be safe before construction began. Construction in London began before State even blast tested the embassy's outside wall. A test is designed to ensure the safety of the building and its personnel. Rather than admitting that it violated Federal law, the State doubled down. Outside the building, called a curtain wall, had failed several computerized blast tests. In fact, let's put up a picture of the rendering. This is just a rendering, not a picture, but a rendering of what the new embassy is supposed to look like in its final in its finality. The outside of the building, called the curtain wall, had failed several computerized blast tests. Thank you. We can take that down. State's Diplomatic Security Bureau required overseas building operations to do a full-scale blast test using explosives rather than a computerized simulation. That blast test did not start until at least 3 months after State certified to Congress that the curtain wall was safe. And the curtain wall did not actually pass blast testing until approximately 6 months after the certification and construction had begun. Proceeding without knowing whether the building would be safe was gambling with the government's money, and we're concerned about that long term. State is freely spending tax dollars on its embassy and consulate construction around the world, yet it asserts it is, quote-unquote, self-funding the London project through sales of other properties in London. But that's part of the problem with the London embassy construction. State sold its current embassy in London to a group of investors, and under the deal, State has to leave its current space by early of 2017. Significant financial penalties to State and ultimately the taxpayers will be incurred should construction run over schedule. As we've learned over several past hearings on the subject, most of the time, at least our experience, that has happened. The fear of those penalties drove State to take significant risks to meet its aggressive schedule. These risks include contracting vehicle never before used by the State Department. According to the Inspector General, the contracting officer did not fully understand the contract. That lack of understanding resulted in the Overseas Building Operations Office and the Inspector General's inability to account for roughly $42 million. The IG does not believe the money is missing, it's just not accounted for due to mismanagement. Quite frankly, I can't tell the difference. If they can't account for it and they can't find it, I just don't know how it's not missing, and that's part of what we're hoping to clear up here today. Even accepting the IG's conclusion, this shows that State trying to meet perhaps too aggressive a construction schedule made another gamble by using a contracting vehicle that it did not understand. State did accept the Inspector General's recommendation that it offer additional training for future contracts of this sort, but there are some other challenges and questions we have that we hope to have clarified regarding the London Embassy project. State Department spent $1 million, evidently, on a granite sculpture that was too heavy for the new embassy. However, no one figured that out before spending the money. In addition, the glass for the curtain wall should have been earning some frequent flyer miles, as press reports indicate the glass was manufactured in Europe, shipped to the United States under guard for framing, and then sent back across the Atlantic for installation in London. State's Undersecretary for Management, the same person who certified the construction could begin before the blast testing, dismissed the criticism, saying, quote, "Sometimes you have to move things, sometimes you don't," end quote. And finally, the documents produced to the committee show that State authorized what appears to be $12 million in soil remediation. As we've discussed in other hearings this year, particularly in Mexico City, State apparently doesn't mind building embassies in places where the soil is contaminated. We'd like to learn more about what's happening there. We need to get our people in safe facilities as quickly as possible. We don't need to take wild risks and freely spend money that could otherwise be used to get other folks in high-risk places into safer facilities. Building and construction is a volatile situation. There are many moving parts, and things change and adapt as they move over time. We understand that, and there needs to be some degree of flexibility. But with two outstanding recommendations from the Inspector General, we would like to have those resolved and have this discussion. This is a billion-dollar expenditure, and we need to get it right, because London is one of our most important embassies on the face of the planet, and we need to make sure that it's done right and properly, and we account for, in this case, tens of millions of dollars that we can't seem to find. So